This is now well known throughout the league. And if DeWanna Bonner claims that she picked the Fever over the Lynx and Mercury to win, Minnesota Lynx fans, you might want to prepare for this one. Cheryl Reeve believes she had the player virtually signed, sealed, and delivered the contract with the press conference likely already planned. But then the Indiana Fever suddenly swooped in and took Boner away like a thief in the night. The Lynx didn't just lose a player, they also lost the focal point of their entire offseason strategy. But here's the thing. For months, Boner had been giving clues. For example, when she publicly stated that she wanted to win now, or how she hardly reacted when the Phoenix Mercury traded for her own fiancée, Alyssa Thomas. The warning signs were flashing bright red, but Minnesota ignored them all because they believed they had this figured out. Nevertheless, the Lynx were there, so choosing the Fever over Caitlin Clark. And the Indiana Fever seems to be saying something. The WNBA man was talking about Nafisa Coer going on a revenge tour, which was undoubtedly going to be a revenge tour worth watching because they were going to mop the league. This wasn't a last-minute decision. Rather, it was a calculated move that had been planned for a long time. The Lynx were so confident in their pursuit of Boner that they were practically sizing her up for her jersey number because they saw her as the missing piece to take them back to championship glory, placing her next to Kayla and Nafisa Coer. All 5 of the regular starters from the previous season left during this off-season free agency, including 3 who had played a total of 23 seasons with the team. One of those players, Alyssa Thomas, sought a move to a championship contender, Phoenix, with superior facilities. If you want to see how committed Minnesota was to this plan, they even considered moving to Phoenix. McBride, the front office, had already envisioned parades through downtown Minneapolis, celebrating what they believed would be their next title run man. The Lynx also considered trading for Thomas, league sources told The Athletic, and looked at signing her fiancé and former Sun teammate DeWanna B. Meanwhile, while the Lynx were making their intentions clear for the world to see, Indiana was playing it cool, with no leaks or flashy moves, just smart, quiet relationship building behind the scenes while Minnesota was out there. Trading for Alyssa Thomas Bonner's fiancé in a desperate attempt to sweeten the deal is the basketball equivalent of buying someone a house before the first anniversary. Risky, desperate, and ultimately unnecessary. In an attempt to create a public spectacle out of their pursuit, the Fever put together a masterclass in patience and precision, leading Reeve to believe she had this figured out while they prepared the stage for the ideal steal. The other things, desires or factors, as they say. I'm pretty sure that's the main reason she left and went to the Fever instead of the Lynn. And then the move happened in an instant when Boner declined Minnesota's offer and decided to team up with Caitlin Clark in Indiana. The Lynx left Reeve completely confused. Can you imagine Alyssa Thomas going to the Lynx and letting Nafisa Coer play the 4? And then you have Boner there as well, like dog that is woo DeWanna Bonner played Cheryl Reeve in the Lynx front office like a fiddle. The most bizarre part is that Boner had been leaving clues about her true intentions for months, and no one in the company knew about it. Furious, what was supposed to be their biggest off-season acquisition had just slipped through their fing, and there was nothing they could do about it. Oh my goodness, bro. You could tell that the Lynx knew that the N and the F were piping up as far as grabbing some of the best players to make that organization run like a well-oiled machine. Remember the WNBA All-Star game last season? Photos of Boner and Caitlin Clark having deep, focused conversations surfaced. These weren't just courteous exchanges or quick greetings between competitors. If only they had been paying attention. The basketball world assumed that Minnesota was the front runner for Boner, who was already laying the foundation for a future with Clark in the Indiana All-Star game. Now, some pictures of Caitlin Clark and DeWanna Bonner at the All-Star game are making the rounds online, kind of tearing it up without mentioning the facts that this whole situation could have been in the works already. This wasn't a last-minute change of heart. Rather, it was a brilliantly planned move months in the making. However, in actuality, she had already allied herself with the Indiana Fever's vision long before free agency opened. While Reeve and company were busy working out their championship strategy, Boner was quietly embracing the team's long-term plan. Most teams are aware that this is going to happen, so they are bolstering their roster. That move alone would have been crazy. Family? It would have been unfair because you have Fee and then McBride. Oh my goodness, dog. And let's not forget and talk about Phoenix for a moment, because they truly believed they had everything locked up. The Mercury made what they believed to be the ultimate power move by trading for Alyssa Thomas Bonner's fiancé. Their front office must have been congratulating themselves because they thought there was no way she would turn them down. So we literally brought in her partner. However, reality set in, and Boner didn't just turn them down, she didn't even appear tempted. Phoenix's grand plan fell apart completely, leaving them scrambling to figure out how they went so wrong. On paper, it made perfect sense for a 37-year-old veteran seeking one final ring before retirement, but Bonner noticed something different that both Minnesota and Phoenix somehow missed. Phoenix also heavily courted Boner League sources, but, DeWanna Bonner pulled the rabbit out of the hat on me, man, and said, "I'm going in Minnesota." On the other hand, they had every reason to think they were the perfect fit with a championship pedigree, a seasoned coach in Cheryl Reeve, and a roster full of talent ready to win. In her official statement following her signing with the Indiana Fever, Bonner highlighted her excitement about being a part of an organization on the rise and her commitment to growing the sport of women's basketball. This isn't just PR jargon. She's a veteran who's been around long enough to recognize genuine potential when she sees it. While others saw Indiana as a work in progress, Bonner saw an opportunity to create something unique, and now she's ready to do just that. The Indiana Fever recently went from being a WNBA afterthought to the hottest ticket in town. DeWanna Bonner's decision wasn't just a typical free agent move. It was a statement when she signed with Indiana. She wasn't looking for an easy ring. Instead, she wanted to build something to turn a struggling franchise back into a legitimate powerhouse. If you ask her, that journey to greatness starts now, and I believe maybe Bonner is heading towards becoming the best. I wonder what the other factors were. The most telling aspect of Bonner's decision was that she didn't just say she wanted to help Indiana compete. She specifically mentioned bringing them back to championship form. This wasn't about jumping on an already established contender like Minnesota or Phoenix. Rather, it was about building a dynasty from the ground up and making a lasting impact by helping transform a team that had been lost in the shuffle for years. She's essentially saying, I want to play in front of sold-out crowds. I want to get that popularity popping, I want people to sell out my jersey. This is where it gets even more bizarre, though. Because, according to The Athletic, Bonner, winning right away was her top priority, which means she genuinely believes Indiana gives her a better chance at a championship than Minnesota or Phoenix. Let that sink in. At first glance, it sounds crazy, but when you really think about it, it makes perfect sense. So, hey, man, what a business decision. Indiana isn't just another rebuilding team. They have something special with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah B. Boston. The Fever have arguably the most dangerous young basketball duo, perfectly complementing each other. They could run the WNBA for the next 10 years. Bonner saw that she realized that joining Clark in Boston now puts her in the ideal position to ride the wave. That's just starting to swell. So I knew Alyssa Thomas wouldn't ever consider the assumption was that veterans only wanted to sign with teams that had already built championship rosters. Bonner turned that logic on its head, realizing that the real power move isn't joining an established super team, but aligning with the future super team before everyone else catches on. She was talking about the fan base at the end of the season, but yeah, Mindy Bond said, look, forget what you're talking about. I'm about to take my talents to Indiana. I don't care how you feel about the organization for years. What's really amazing is that the Indiana Fever, the team that had been the league's laughingstock for years, are now the most sought-after destination in the WNBA. Remember all those jokes about Fever fans? Yes, those tweets are getting worse. She saw the future of women's basketball developing before the rest of the league even realized it. If this happens, I think the Indiana Fever will be one of the best running gun teams you've ever seen in the WNBA. That brings me full circle to my earlier statement that Caitlin Clark will still be able to score 20 points a game and provide assists. Indiana wasn't just bad for a few seasons. They were buried in irrelevance for nearly 10 years. They were a small market team that couldn't track top-tier talent no matter how much money they had. When you looked at the WNBA landscape, it was painfully obvious where the stars wanted to go big market glitz in New York. I'm not going to lie though, and I think the Fever have a great chance of averaging between 90 and 100 points per game. Caitlin will still be Caitlin, and she'll be more efficient on the shooting given how she's been working out and getting her shot together. The place where players' careers went to fade away was either the championship pedigree in Minnesota or the bright lights of Las Vegas, Indiana. For a strong season, Indiana Fever star Jonna Bonner turned down 2 elite teams in free agency because, no offense to the Mercury or the connections, but I don't see them going all the way. Even after drafting Caitlin Clark, analysts still assume veterans would avoid them. The reasoning was straightforward. One rookie, no matter how elite, couldn't erase years of a losing culture overnight. Indiana was supposed to stay. At the bottom, stuck in basketball purgatory. But Bonner's choice just proved those experts were completely wrong. The Indiana Fever aren't just a team on the rise. They're the team that everyone wants to be a part of. If you don't believe it yet, wait, this is just the beginning. I think Indiana has a better future than many of these other teams, and it seems like there's no reason not to be a part of history. In just a few months, the Indiana Fever have officially turned the WNBA on its head, making them the league's hottest team for the decision by 3-time champion and 7-time All-Star DeWanna Bonner to select a rebuilding team over established contenders wasn't just a victory. It was a seismic shift. The message is clear. Indiana is no longer a place for players to quietly finish their careers or a stepping stone. For years, they couldn't even get a meeting with top-tier free agents, but now veterans are lining up, hoping for a chance to join the revolution happening in Indiana. Destination and Bonner's move is making the rest of the league take a close look at what's going on in Indianapolis. Virgil, they weren't traded, but Cunningham was traded there, but Natasha Howard signed with the Indiana Fever, and more significantly, I believe that DeWanna Bonner's signing with the Indiana Fever was a representation of that. So what changed? And why are players suddenly choosing Indiana over teams like Minnesota or Phoenix? It's not just Caitlin Clark's arrival, though that's undoubtedly helpful. It's the ideal storm of talent, vision, and opportunity. The Fever aren't just rebuilding, they're building a dynasty in real time. 2 consecutive #1 picks, Clark and Aaliyah Boston, have laid the groundwork for veterans hoping to win. Clark stretches the floor, and as a team, they improve everyone around them. Now, I think Caitlin Clark will have a season similar to LeBron's. He gets easy baskets and doesn't have to work as hard as he did before Luka. So, yeah, I think Caitlin will be in those situations where she's scurry off the screens and getting those backdoor passes. Another testament to her 20-point average is that she's getting easier buckets than she did last year. However, it's not just court chemistry. The Fever are now the biggest show in women's basketball after struggling attendance numbers skyrocketed. Their games are must-watch events, and the media attention is unparalleled, giving every player on the roster a chance to boost their profile. Brand deals are pouring in for veterans nearing the end of their careers, and this kind of exposure could mean a huge payout both now and in retirement. As I've said, there are a lot of advantages to the benefits of playing for the Indiana Fever include increased visibility, more endorsements, a chance to win, and fans at home or on the road. Bonner saw this coming before anyone else did, and her words pretty much sum up what she's feeling. I'm really grateful to be joining an organization that's on the rise and committed to growing the sport of women's basketball. She wasn't just interested in winning, she wanted to help shape the future of the league, and that's exactly what she's done. This isn't just about one team's failed free agency plans, it's about an entire league going through a transformation. The old powerhouses are being replaced by Indiana, the team of the future, and Bonner's move just confirmed it. In addition to Jonna Bonner's exceptional play on the court, the veteran presence and leadership will bring locker room. you know, heaven. The rest of the WNBA had better get ready because they're coming back to take over. Are you excited? Let us know in the comments, like, and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Click the video on the screen and we'll see you in the